Welcome to episode 202 of the All the Book Show, recorded at the David A. Howe Public Library. We talk book news, author news, literary news, and Spider-Man.
That's right. Twip.
Yeah. Hey,
Twip.
I want pictures of Spider-Man. Page 1 on my desk right now.
I like it.
Thank you.
Yes, that's right, folks. Today we are going to be talking about Spider-Man, and this episode is extra special because here you have episode 202.
Extra special.
Where we're going to talk all about Spider-Man, but this episode has a very special supplement because we sat down with...
Vitamin B!
No.
Oh.
We sat down with Marvel Comics, Valiant Comics, novelist, author, Fred Van Lente to talk about his run on Spider-Man and many other things. We're going to be releasing that as a special off-the-books episode
couple days after this.
Yes, so you can tune in shortly and listen to our long conversation with Fred. He was very generous with his time and gave us quite a lot of interesting things.
Talked about Spider-Man, talked about his character Scorpion.
Yep.
Talked about writing Hercules with Greg Pak.
Yeah. We talked about his new series, Psylord, so a little bit about Alpha Flight. So we really got into it with Fred Van Lente. So if you're not familiar with his work, you probably are and just don't know it. But go back, read a little bit more, and then in a couple days we're going to release the supplement where we talk more about Spider-Man, more with Fred Van Lente. But today we're going to focus...
But if you can, you should also take a vitamin C supplement if you're not getting your vitamin C.
Yeah.
Humans and guinea pigs are the only mammals that can't produce their own vitamin C.
This is just good advice.
Yeah,
this is
so
just good
avoid
advice.
scurvy.
Yeah,
that stuff is.
You
Did you ever read The Terror by Dan Simmons?
No, thanks.
It's all about scurvy. Scurvy and the Abominable Snowman. And I'll tell you what, I'd rather deal with the Abominable than scurvy.
Yeah.
So
I also want to thank our listeners again for continuing to tell us their favorite sci-fi stories because they continue to come in long after we've recorded, and we like to hear it. So you can always talk to us at Facebook at David A. Howe Public Library or on Twitter at All the Book Show. We like to hear your responses, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
But we are going to be talking about Spider-Man today because the new movie, Spider-Man Far From Home, is out. And plus, we're just big Spider-Man fans.
Yeah.
Equally.
Yeah.
Not like Aladdin, where one of us is a bigger fan than the other. But Spider-Man, I feel like we're really equal, and I'm a bigger Aladdin fan. So why don't we start with book
news?
This
is just because I don't like King of Thieves.
You don't like King of Thieves, and it's great. It's a great movie.
Okay.
Robin Williams is back. John Rhys Davies is there. It's great.
John Rhys Davies is his dad?
Yeah, he's the dad.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess you saw the musical on stage as well.
Oh, geez. Boy, did I. Yes, I was at the ALA conference a few years back in Chicago, and they were showing the Aladdin was on stage. I hated it.
Yeah.
But I also saw The King and I, and I thought it was great. So what are you going to do?
So if you combine Aladdin and The King and I, you get Aladdin, King of Thieves.
Yeah.
Nick loves it.
And John Rhys Davies. Asp. Very dangerous.
Yeah.
All right.
Was that from...
That was from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for asking.
I was like, is that an Aladdin?
Thanks for asking.
All right.
Let's dive into the old bookmark.
Woo! I like that little dance you were doing.
Thank you.
About the bookmark.
First of all, I want to apologize to our listeners, our viewers who are watching the video either on Twitch or on its later YouTube days because I am wearing a Superman tie for the Spider-Man Spotlight. It's only because I work the kids' desk on Mondays and I wanted a fun tie. This is not a statement. I'm not trolling anyone. I'm just wearing a Superman tie, so my apologies.
I think Stan Lee and Sam Raimi both cribbed enough from Superman for you to get away with that.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, let's do bookmark.
Okay.
Here are some of the things that I've been reading. And I had a productive week since we last recorded. So I'm going to give you a batch of graphic novels, and I'm going to tell you about the novels that I read. I read Spidey, School's Out. So there was
For how long?
For the summer.
Oh, just
forever.
Oh, wow. Lucky us.
Spidey, School's Out. So Spidey was a 2-volume series that I absolutely loved, and we're going to talk about that more in this segment. This is coming a little later. It's a different author. Similar aesthetic. This did not work.
Oh.
Now, we talked a little bit about this last week with The Flash, but I'm not a super fan of when they take a TV or movie and then try to sort of morph the comics into being in there.
Yeah.
Because in Spidey, what is it called? School's Out, you have two characters who look like Ned and MJ, look and act like Ned and MJ. They're not Ned and MJ. They're just different characters. And it's so annoying.
Yeah.
Either don't do that.
Yeah.
Make them Ned and MJ, or see the first suggestion, which was don't do that. So there was some cool stuff with Black Panther.
The first suggestion.
But I didn't particularly like this. But I do think the volumes 1 and 2 of just Spidey, great. We have them in our collection. Check them out. Whip. I read X-Men Noir, which is by Fred Van Lente.
Did you say noir funny?
Did I? I feel like I did.
You kind of growled it.
Noir.
Yeah. Like if Sabretooth was telling you about X-Men Noir.
This takes the X-Men... sort of, and puts them in a noir detective setting. And My criticism of this would be I think it works as a noir story, does not work as an X-Men story.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what I said in my review.
Is
Hey,
it? Okay.
But if you want to hear why that might be so,
Yeah.
you can listen to an upcoming interview in a couple of weeks
Yeah.
on Previously on X-Men,
Right,
where we
right.
talk about this.
I appreciated it. I didn't particularly enjoy it. Batgirl Beyond Burnside. This is the first volume of Batgirl in the Rebirth era. We have it in our collection.
We have a bunch of these, yeah.
We do. I like that they're trying to do something different with the Batgirl Barbara Gordon character. I like the look of it. I like the overall style. Story didn't get me.
No.
Do with that what
The
you
second volume looks more exciting.
Okay.
The Son of Penguin storyline.
Okay.
So
I read Superior by Mark Millar. It's actually Mark Miller. You always say Millar and you trip me up, but it's Mark Miller.
it's Millar.
It's not.
It is.
It's not.
I'm looking at it.
I know it's written like that, but it's not how he pronounces it.
Well, but he's Scottish, so maybe he's putting a Scottish accent on
Oh. Anyway, so this is basically where a little. I'll tell you what.
it. Uh-huh.
I when I was watching this, I was like
Reading this.
reading this, but it made me think of the Shazam. First of all, I think this ripped off Big quite a bit,
Yes.
and they do cop to that in the story. But I think the Shazam movie got a lot from this.
Maybe.
The scenes where, sorry, I didn't tell you the plot of this. A kid gets the opportunity to be Superior, a Superman-esque character. And so he goes from being a kid to a full-grown Superman-type character. And he's got to tell his best friend and all that.
Yeah.
Those scenes are like straight-up Tom Hanks' Big, which is a very creepy movie.
Yeah.
In hindsight. At the time, I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then I watched it as an adult and was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to report this to someone. But it copies a lot from that. But then Shazam copies a lot from Superior.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
I don't know.
And I enjoyed this. I thought it was pretty fun. I actually didn't know that I was reading the entire thing. I was like,
Oh.
where's Superior Volume 2? And there's no Superior
Yeah.
Volume 2.
Yeah, this is pretty standalone.
This is it. This is it. This is one that Eric forced in my hands when I was in a graphic novel drought.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy it, so thank you. What
Yeah.
what are your feelings on this?
This is one I really liked. It was
Yeah.
one of those. It's just one where it seems like everybody can do a better Superman movie than Warner Brothers.
That is fair.
Because
is
you
fair.
read this and like he's getting Superman right here.
Right,
Just
yeah.
the way basically. But the difference between this and Shazam is the kid who is Superior in this. Am I right? He's crippled.
He I don't remember what exactly it was, but he walked with two like crutches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he going back into his regular body is actually kind of like, something he doesn't want to do, not
Right.
just because he doesn't want to be a superhero anymore. And throughout the story, he has to make a choice of whether he's going to be superior anymore. He has
Right.
to, make a selfless act. And it's just one of those things. Is like, oh, nobody understood this in the DC
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
And I don't actually know because Netflix bought up like the Miller, the
Yeah.
Mark Miller universe. So I don't know if this is going to be a Netflix property at some point. But I think
That'd
this
be
is one of those
interesting.
things they bought up.
It does. I have a big pet peeve of when they put like contemporary pop culture references in things. And this was like Barack Obama was the president,
Yeah.
and Superior was like, "Do you want me to go get Osama bin Laden?" And I was just like,
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
that's
like that.
that's definitely Mark Millar's thing. You read Ultimates.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, Betty Banner is like, I'm interviewing Freddie Prinze Jr. to play the Hulk in this movie or something, and it's all like Captain America met George W. Bush, like Brian Hitch drew.
Yeah, I don't.
George
I'm-
W.
no,
so
I'm not a
like,
fan of
I
that.
think that's just what like Millar likes to do. So
Okay.
all right,
I read Marvel Adventures: The Black Costume. This is another Fred Van Lente Spider-Man. So this is part of the Marvel Adventures series, which is for a younger age.
Yeah.
And we talk in depth about the Marvel Adventures imprint and the different things that Fred wrote there. So again, look out for this upcoming Off the Books episode with
And-
author Fred Van Lente.
look out! Here comes the Spider-Man. The Marvel
Can he
Adventures
swing?
from a web.
Oh, okay.
I read a bunch of the earlier stuff in this series as well, and a lot of the earlier stuff is just kind of retelling a lot of the Stan Lee,
Yeah.
Steve Ditko stuff, like updating it all and changing some things. But I'm like, oh, this is just how we dealt with the Vulture the first time we met him. This is how. So they are written for kids, but I think it was also just to retell like the original
Well,
stories.
it's handy because, like we discussed in the interview, I mean, you can pick those up and just read
Yeah.
them. You don't have to be like, wait a minute, how does this tie into Annihilation or like whatever the big event at the time is? They're just their own thing, which can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Finally, I read Superman Shazam First Thunder. I was not a huge fan of this book. It's a Superman Shazam story, as the title will tell you. I thought it ended on a really intriguing note, and I kind of would have liked to have seen that story rather than what we got. And the art I was really on the fence about because, like in long shots, when you sort of see the world, it looks really good. But Superman and Shazam's faces, like anytime there was a close-up, it was just like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Are you saying Superman and Shazam are butterfaces?
A little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
inappropriate.
I didn't like it.
Okay.
So that's it for graphic novels. I read a few novels. Some of these
books.
Some of these you're going to snicker at.
Yeah, I am.
The first is Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston, and this was not good.
Oh, sorry,
this was
man.
not good.
That's
a
too bad.
few weeks back, I read Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. I want to say that was great. That I feel like was all of the things that were cool about the prequels. It was like, let's focus on this, and that was a very successful book. Queen's Shadow focuses on the character of Padme Amidala, transitioning from being queen to being senator.
And she wrote the Ahsoka.
Yeah, she did.
YA book.
She did. And it was so focused on like the politics of it and the Trade Federation and all that. And she had these like interchangeable handmaidens that followed her everywhere. And it was just like, I can't tell these characters apart. Why are we continuing to talk about these characters?
That means they're doing the job.
You're right. Exactly. But it was just so boring.
Did they get into banking?
No,
Oh.
but it was basically like, how do I maneuver as a senator? Which it just didn't work. I just have no idea who the audience.
So
for
it didn't
this
engage
is.
with her super toxic, super fatal relationship with her creepy. Older,
Actually, no,
younger
I don't.
Boyfriend.
I don't think it mentioned that at all. But it also, I really didn't like the way that she, as a character, kind of had no agency, which is how she comes across in the movies as well.
Yeah, especially after episode 1.
Yeah, she's just kind of like the queen asked her to be a senator, and she's like, okay, cool, whatever. And then like Bail Organa's like, come and be in a coalition, and like all these different things are happening, and she's just kind of like, it's like they're treating her as if she is a strong character, the way they speak about her. But her actions in the book are that of a character who just goes with the tides, which is like,
in the movie, I
it
think
just doesn't
originally
work.
we were going to see her starting the rebellion.
Yeah.
which would have redeemed a lot of her character
It
arc
would have
in the movies.
and I think the novelizations do that as
Yeah.
well. But I think this is a ultimately very skippable book because it's not interesting. It doesn't really tell you anything that you don't already know, and it actually kind of, I feel like, takes away a little bit what she does accomplish in the movies, which is not a lot.
Well, would you say after reading this that she's an angel? Are you an angel?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of the worst line in the prequel trilogy, and that's a horse race right there.
Yeah. It's a pod race. You're welcome.
Let's see. I read the novelization of Men in Black International. Take it away. I thought you'd have some funny comments about that.
About the novelization of
Yeah.
Men in Black International?
Yeah.
No,
You don't have anything?
Were there any funny comments in the movie? I'm kidding.
it.
I haven't seen the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I liked it.
So.
There's a world in which you enjoy it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
fun
you know,
world.
longtime listeners will know that I love a good novelization. In fact, we did a whole episode about it.
Makes
If you
Peter
care-
David one of your most read authors.
That might be true. If you care to listen to that, you can go back and find our episode about novelizations, but I don't know the number. Do you?
What?
It's episode 136, all the
right.
books, the novelization. As far as novelizations go, this was pretty good.
Yeah.
It filled out, especially, what's his name? Thor. What's his real name?
What's Thor's real name?
Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth.
Thor Odin's son.
It filled out his character quite a bit, which was nice. It added some pieces that were probably just ultimately cut from the movie, but really did kind of flesh him out a little bit, which I thought was good.
You know what was cut in
Yes.
the movie?
What?
Hemsworth's abs. Because he's cut.
Oh, I see.
He's cut.
Yeah, I thought you meant he was like cut, but you mean he was cut.
His
Like,
body.
cut.
Okay. He's cut.
It also included a short story
Really?
about the characters, which was pretty interesting. So overall, I had a good time.
Did you ever watch the cartoon?
No, I didn't.
That was pretty good.
Oh, okay.
I really enjoyed it. It had a really weird art style, but it was kind of cool, episodic, but also like.
And did it follow
great
like the
character.
Will Smith character, or was it totally different?
Yeah, it was. I think it's after Men in Black 1.
Okay.
If Tommy Lee Jones stayed.
I see.
So it's kind of an alternate reality.
Confusing.
I
All
think
right.
at one point, one of the characters is like, I heard they're making a movie out of us.
Oh,
So,
there you go.
yeah.
And then finally,
Doesn't make you a good kept secret, though.
No, I read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. So this is quite a book. You feel every one of the 700 pages, but
That's
it's
the sound
not
of a goldfinch.
it's not bad. I don't say that because it's bad. It's just it really is a book that you need to devote some time to.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a sprawling story. It's kind of hard for me to tell you what it's about, but
Oh.
basically I don't even know. I guess I just don't want to give much away, but you're following a certain character who has a series of he starts as basically you follow him from the time he's a teenager, like 13, to when he's kind of a settled adult, probably 30, 35.
Ooh.
And he just goes through so many different life changes.
Right. Puberty.
And it's one of those
Second
things where
puberty.
it's like you kind of think you've seen the last of a certain character or a certain situation,
Right.
and it comes back 300-400 pages
Oof.
later. So it's very well written. It's very there's a attention to detail and a carefulness in the writing that makes it so you cannot see a character for literally hundreds of pages,
Right.
and then they come back, and it almost feels like you're in the new season of a TV show, or it's like a sequel somehow, and you're like, oh, I remember them.
Yeah.
So
Everywhere you look.
it's definitely worth a read. It's definitely going to take you some time, but I think that it managed to keep hold of the reins for all 700 pages and come to an ending that is. I mean, there are some things that I felt like, well, I would have liked to have gotten a little closure on that, but I think as a whole, it really manages to keep all that in check and get you to a place that's ultimately satisfying. So. I'm late to the party here with the Goldfinch because it was all the rage a couple years back. But if you haven't read it, now's a good time because it is in the process of being adapted.
Tell you what, if you can remember the Goldfinch party, you weren't at that party.
Absolutely. That's it for me book-wise. Okay. I'm currently reading The Hunter by Darwin Cook. This is a detective story, a graphic novel. Good so far. And I'm reading Broken Bow, the novelization to the first episode of Enterprise with the Sci-Fi Book Club that I'm in.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right.
I finished a few games. I played a game called The Whittle Tree, which was really good. It was a really fun little, kind of reminded me of like, I don't know, like Yoshi's Story or something like that. I played it with my son, and you're just a little tree stump going around trying to find water.
Okay. Yeah, he looks
very fun.
He looks very
Again,
cute.
not a game you can get physical, but if you Steam or wherever else you play your games. It was a quick game, a couple of hours, but great to play with kids. A lot of fun.
All right.
And then I had a bit of a Toy Story marathon over the weekend.
What?
Yeah. I'd never seen Toy Story 3. And a few weeks back, we'd watched Toy Story 1 with my son, and he wanted to watch more. And so we were like, well, I guess we'll just watch Toy Story 2. And then that was over, and I was like, let's just watch Toy Story 3.
Okay.
So we did. And then we got in the car.
How do you like it as a child?
We went and watched Toy Story 4.
Toy Story 3 gets pretty intense near the end.
It does. Yeah, there were definitely some times where he was like, I'm just tired. I'm not emotional about this at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was in it. Hot take on the Toy Story franchise here. The first one is great. Stays classic. I remember loving the second one. On rewatch, I felt a little more like Return of Jafar than King of Thieves. How do you? Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Have you
Toy
watched
Story
it
2 is
recently?
pretty good. Yeah.
You watched it recently?
Yeah, I watched it when I was living with some friends. They had kids and they were watching it all the time, and so I was just like, I haven't watched this in forever. And I put it in. I'm like, wow, this is still really good.
It felt. I don't know. It just felt a little direct to video to me.
It originally was planned to be directed to video.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Number 3, I just saw for the first time over the weekend. I thought it was pretty decent.
Yeah.
It replays a lot of bits. Like I don't think the Toy Story series is super original because it tends to keep reusing.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I don't know.
Well, like in 2
I haven't
and 3,
really thought of that too much.
Like you have in 2, you have the Buzz Lightyear who is fresh out of the box and is doing the whole Buzz Lightyear thing, and then 3 he reverts to that again. So like you kind of play that same joke. And I sort of felt like Tour Guide Barbie from 2 was pretty similar to Ken in 3. I don't know. Anyway,
that was Michael Keaton.
I know. I love Michael Keaton. He was great. I thought that 3 was a really satisfying ending. So we finished that, and I was like,
I was pretty grumpy
no
about 4
idea
happening.
what they're going to do now.
Yeah.
But we sort of decided that 3, as a trilogy, it kind of works like this is the Toys story, whereas 4 is more like a Woody epilogue.
Yeah.
Which I actually liked, and kind of, I would say that's my favorite since the first
4
one.
was pretty good, yeah.
I thought that worked all around.
Yeah.
I thought Bo Peep was really great in it, and I think that it did manage to find, like it. Sometimes you have that movie, and you're like, well, why did they make this? This is stupid.
Yeah.
Like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie to jump into later. But I didn't find that. I didn't find it lacking. I thought, yeah, totally. This is a worthy addition. Yeah. So I'm thumbs up for Toy Story 4.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. You'd seen it. We talked about this last week, and you were pretty happy with it, right?
Yeah, because I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
I was like, why are they doing this? I like the ending for Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
And it was very surprising.
Yeah.
Not unlike another film we'll talk about later.
Okay. All right. I guess that's it for me. Sorry, that was so very long.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Not as much as you. Holy cow.
I'm sorry.
Graphic novel-wise, I started reading The Sheriff of Babylon. The first volume is called Bang, Bang, Bang. This is by Tom King, and it is a Vertigo title. I said vertical. This is a Vertigo title, fairly recent. Mm-hmm. This is basically the main character is like technically the sheriff over with the military.
Is anyone else hearing him say sheriff?
Sheriff.
It's
sheriff.
It's like how you say serp instead of syrup.
Yeah, pass the syrup.
You're saying sheriff.
I'm saying
instead
syrup.
of sheriff.
Syrup.
It's 2 syllables.
Okay.
Sheriff.
I'm just getting to the end of the sentence
Sorry,
a lot faster than you.
You're right. Sheriff.
It's good. It's depressing. It's, anything that's dealing with the Middle East is usually pretty depressing when it's the military over there. But it's a good story. It's only 2 volumes, so I was thinking
Woody is also a sheriff.
Yeah. He's not the sheriff of Babylon.
There you go. Okay.
So
yeah, sheriff.
I also finished Spider-Man: The Venom Factor by Diane Duane.
Oh, the book.
Yeah, the book.
Fun. I have those. I have those on my shelf.
I haven't read a Marvel Comics superhero novelization book since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things I forgot about this. Like when I was a kid, I ate up the fact that when they were talking about a character, they would tell you their whole history. And chapters are so long. So the Hobgoblin 2 is in this. And it doesn't start with the Hobgoblin 2's name is. It's early in his career, Spider-Man ran into a villain called Green Goblin, and it becomes like the Old Testament. It's like Green Goblin begot Hobgoblin, who begot Hobgoblin 2. And it's just... Is
it less violent than the Old Testament?
I guess so.
Okay,
4 or 5 chapters in, you've had everything about Spider-Man explained to you. There's a chapter about Mary Jane and her acting modeling career. There's a chapter about Spider-Man at the Daily Bugle. There's a chapter about his villains, and there's just so much information. And I mean, as a kid, I always ate that stuff up, but it was fine. Venom's there. They're chasing after the Hobgoblin 2, who has nuclear devices. Apparently, this is a trilogy. I have the second book, The Lizard Sanction, which also has Venom in it. Okay. And then there's a third book I didn't know about called The Octopus Agenda.
Yeah, I have that.
Also has
I have
Venom
this
in it.
trilogy.
You have Octopus Agenda?
I do, yeah.
Well, I'll have to read that
you can borrow it,
after I finish. I did start reading The Lizard Sanction, which I like the lizard. I like 90s lizard.
Yeah.
So
from the Amazing Spider-Man film.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, jeez.
The snake.
Yeah. So I guess those are what I read. That Spider-Man book and Sheriff of Babylon.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right. So we'll talk about the Spider-Man a little bit later. Talk about it a little bit more.
We should talk about Spider-Man now.
Right now?
For the segment.
Okay. You ready to do it?
Yes.
All right. Do you want to sing the Spider-Man theme song?
Yeah. Hey, it's Spider-Man. He's your friend. He's going to help you to the end.
Wow,
He's Spider-Man.
Yeah. A lot of people would have gone with a more traditional theme.
Yeah.
But you found the one.
Oh, you would have done Donna, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yeah, that's one I would have done.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it just gets in your head.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we are going to be talking about everybody's favorite webhead, everybody's favorite wall crawler, Spider-Man. Do you want to take us in with a little history of the character of Spider-Man?
The history of the character with Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I mean, this was one of Stan Lee's earlier creations.
In collaboration with Steve Ditko,
Steve Ditko. So after he kind of created the Marvel Universe with Fantastic Four, with Fantastic Four, he was kind of breaking new ground with superheroes arguing and being real people. And with this one, it was kind of revigorating comics again by making Spider-Man younger. I think technically he's supposed to be 15 or 16, but the way he's drawn in those comics, I always thought he was 25.
He's a cool 38.
Yeah.
So Spider-Man first appeared in Amazing Fantasy number 15 in August of 1962.
Yeah. This is a character I think Stan Lee's always kind of, I don't know, maybe he doesn't say he has favorites, but you always kind of get the vibe that Stan Lee liked Spider-Man the most of all. And probably because he's his most successful, as Mickey Mouse is to Disney, Spider-Man is to Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And so this this is where Stan Lee, I mean, Fantastic Four had it, but this is definitely where Stan Lee was like, comic books are soap opera.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make every issue like a soap opera.
Yeah.
And I mean, he created so many like background characters for Spider-Man. So many, I mean, this is as down on their luck as you can for a superhero.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we're not gonna spend a ton of time on this because we really did talk a lot about Stan Lee Spider-Man in that Stan Lee episode that we did a while back, which again is episode 169. But to speak to your point, you read those Spider-Man comics and you get a fully developed character in Peter Parker, Spider-Man.
Right.
And you read Superman of that time and you get nothing.
Right.
Superman is just a big loaf of Wonder Bread without a care in the world besides like, how will I ever prevent Lois from marrying me? You know, it's like there's nothing. You don't get any sense of the fact that like this man has a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's got deadlines. He's got to turn in stories to Perry White at the Daily Planet.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
He's like, he's lonely, he's by him, nothing.
Yeah.
All you get is like, oh, Lex Luthor, I'll fly away. And
Yeah.
that's it. You get nothing. But with Spider-Man, you get this you just see everything. You see all of his worries. You see all of his nerves, all of his like social awkwardness and anxiety. He's all just right there. And I mean literally right there because it's 50% text in those old comic books.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man, if you compare him to his contemporaries in the Silver Age in the 60s, he is a character who you know. Like if you were a kid reading comic books in the 60s, you'd see like a 30-year-old man in Batman who's like got it all together and no internal monologue.
Yeah.
And you'd see Spider-Man being like, who am I going to take to the prom?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But still being
Nobody.
cool and heroic.
Yeah.
So I think what Stan Lee was able to accomplish in those is really, really set this character up because in a way, a lot of the characters that have endured like Spider-Man were established decades earlier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, decades earlier. So, you know, it's not unheard of for a character to come along much later and stick around, Wolverine being a great example. But, you know, for Spider-Man to be on the level with those and really, I don't know, would you say Spider-Man's more iconic? Probably not than a Superman or a Batman. But
I think he actually does top list when they do like worldwide recognition.
Really?
List. I think Spider-Man usually beats out Batman.
Okay.
I don't know if he beats out Superman, but I think Batman's very much like an American property.
I see.
When it comes to like box office and everything, and Spider-Man's a lot more. I think Spider-Man like financially makes way more than any other superhero. In terms of toys, shows, merchandise.
Well,
movies.
he's relatable in a way that is, I think, more universal than a Superman.
There were like 3 very not good movies in a row, and they still made money, and then they've made more money than before.
Yeah.
So I think, he's definitely Marvel's biggest. So.
Okay. So take me back to Eric, young Eric, first discovering a Spider-Man.
So when I was younger, like the X-Men show, like the 90s X-Men cartoon, I remember seeing pieces of the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
Okay.
But I never watched it.
Okay.
Because I don't think we had TV at the time or it just wasn't a thing. But it was always kind of like intriguing. And so I guess I knew who Spider-Man was, but I didn't. So in 2000, when the X-Men movie was coming out, I was getting into X-Men and getting into comics. And my library had like the first 2 or 3 essential X-Men, but they also had like 4 or 5 essential Spider-Man. And I had tried to pick up the first Avengers and the first Fantastic Four, and I was like, these are boring. But I really got into the essential Spider-Mans.
Stan Lee, classic.
This is just like Spider-Man 1 by Stan Lee. You know, the first 20 issues his run, and then it would just keep going. And
if you're going to go back and read these, I really recommend getting a hold of the Marvel Masterworks version.
Yeah,
same stuff, but like full color.
Yeah.
Whereas the Essential or whatever, is it Essentials that Marvel calls them?
The Essentials are their older imprint. Those were black and white, slightly
yeah.
cheaper. They've now released their Epic collections, which I believe are in color, and are basically the new like versions of the Essentials. Yeah. But I mean, this was how I just got into Spider-Man. And so like all those earlier stories are like, I remember reading about like the first Scorpion story and, you know, Molten Man and just all this stuff. I'm like, wow, I kind of like this stuff. So yeah, that was just it. I just got really, cause it just starts and just keeps going. And I really got into like all of the melodrama. I'm like, oh, how is he going to pay for this? And like, it's dated, but it actually, when I was reading it, it felt like it had aged a lot better than some other stuff coming out in 1962. So I guess just because like the problems are more universal rather than like
they're more universal, but they're also the focus is a lot narrower.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, his personal problems don't always translate to the personal problems that like we would have today, or you know, in the early '90s when you were reading these books.
It was also the stuff has changed in the comics, but like. As the movie was coming out, it was still a lot of this stuff. Like, oh, Peter's down on his luck. He can't pay the rent. He can't talk to girls. And so it was very much like you're reading the stuff that they're still doing in the movie. So it didn't even feel like the comics or the character had moved past this stuff. So it worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man always resets to that point, you know, where he's just a down on his luck teenager. For me, much like in our X-Men episode a while back, my beginnings with this character would be Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. There was 2 series that were sort of back-to-back. One was just called Spider-Man, and then there was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and they would kind of air interchangeably and were somewhat connected.
Right, but Amazing Friends had Iceman.
Amazing Friends had Iceman and Firestar, yeah, absolutely. So... I had a VHS tape which had the origin of the Spider Friends on it, and I watched that VHS tape so many times.
I never saw any of these shows when I was growing up. Yeah, none of them.
I know that I saw them on TV. They must have been airing like locally in syndication or something. Right. But Toys R Us put out a bunch of VHS of Pride of the X-Men and the 60s Captain America show, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, different things like that. And so I would just randomly pick those up. And so Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was definitely... And that's my go-to, you know, like that was what got me. But I was always going to there was a comic book store right next to the grocery store, and we would usually go in the comic book store called Collector's Cove. Very skeevy in hindsight. It was like an all teal building with no windows.
Ooh.
And you just go in and it was a small little place.
Sounds like my comic book store. But mine's great.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's like a weird windowless room. But so we go in there and I would dig through the quarter boxes, and Spider-Man was one that I would always like grab.
Nice,
you know, just and I always gravitated more towards like, I mean, I guess this would have been the early 80s or late 80s, early 90s.
Early 80s. How old are you? No, he's young.
But I would still go for like really like 70s Spider-Man is what I liked the best back in the day. So yeah, I would watch the show. And I would collect the comic books and read them, you know, and I had my favorites that I would read over and over again. So I went there. And then the 90s Spider-Man show, as much as the X-Men animated series was appointment TV for me, Spider-Man was like, I could not miss the Spider-Man animated series. And that was like... I was just so into that. Like he could never quite make it. He could never quite make it work with Mary Jane, and then like Felicia Hardy would come in as Black Cat, and he'd be all like, "I just don't know what to do," you know. And it was all so
Doc Ock looked cool.
Yeah. I love J. Jonah Jameson in that. It was just all so like real and like when did that air? When did that air?
Like 92, 93? Pretty close to like, X-Men.
And that was several years, I believe that aired. So that was
I think
like
it lasted until 97.
Right in my early teen years. You know what I mean? I was watching this and it was all like Spider-Man's girl troubles and having crushes and like it was all very like relatable to me. And there's this thing where Mary Jane falls through a portal, and to this day I've never figured out what happened to Mary Jane in that series. So listeners, if you know, please tell me what happened to Mary Jane.
Is this the like Madam Web stuff?
The Madam Web stuff is part of it.
It never got closed. They were supposed to do another season.
Yeah.
So you're always...
I don't think it ever did resolve. But yeah.
Maybe Into the Spider-Verse will solve it for you.
So I was always into that. I was always into Spider-Man, thanks to Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But that really cemented it, the Spider-Man 90s animated series. Did you ever watch? I think it was the 70s. There was a live action.
No, I did not watch this live action show.
It was a weird show. It was a weird show, but I watched that as well.
I didn't watch this or the Japanese Power Rangers version.
No, I didn't see that either. But again, I think my friend had like some episodes of that show like taped on like a Betamax or something, and we'd watch them. But I haven't seen that since I was like, you know, 6.
So in like 2001 would probably be where I'm like learning about Spider-Man, like as ignorant as I could be. And I think so I think you had this book or maybe even have it. There's DK put out still does put out a bunch of like superhero encyclopedias. Did you have the Spider-Man one?
I've read it. Yes.
Yeah. And
Tom DeFalco, right?
Yeah. And I had the X-Men one, and that thing was like a Bible to me. But the Spider-Man one was always so cool too, because he just has so many villains and so many side characters that just like reading it is like, who's this? Like I would read stuff and see like Cardiac in there. I'm like, Cardiac seems cool. And
he's not.
Well, maybe not cool. There's a section in there where it talks about like Spider-Man coming up with like 4 alternate realities. Not realities, alternate identities, because everybody was against Spider-Man. So he took on the role of 4 different superheroes.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And one of them was Dusk. And when I was sitting down to play Dungeons and Dragons and I had to name my rogue, I came up with Dusk, and that's how we get Dusk versus Tweak.
Oh my gosh.
So, but yeah, this was like an encyclopedia. I'm like, this is awesome. This was like,
I didn't think I knew that. I don't think I knew that was the origin of your.
Well, no, because it is the D&D origin, but the actual name, I'm like, oh, Dusk is cool. I even think I thought my thief looked like him. But I've never read those comics either. So like I was reading the Stan Lee comics, reading this encyclopedia, and we both played this game, but on different systems. But in 2000, there was a Spider-Man game.
Yes, there was.
It's still one of like my favorite games of all time.
The N64 cartridge was red.
Yeah.
Red, fools.
Like Spider-Man.
It was awesome.
I played the PS1 version, even though I had a 64. I had bought a PS1 from my friend so I could play Final Fantasy IX and Spider-Man 2000.
Wow.
The differences between them is that the 64 told the story in comic book panels.
Yeah.
And the PS1 had like CGI cutscenes.
Oh.
And it was just like, it was so cool. It was such a cool game to me because it had all his villains, and like the boss fights were cool. It played well. It had some cool music, and it was also, you could collect comic book covers and costumes, and I would just go to the comic book gallery and just look at all the issues. I'm like, how do I read all these? How do I get all these? I wish there was some way I could just read all these comics.
Did you ever play? There was an NES game called, I think, Spider-Man and the X-Men. That was
I played the Super Nintendo
piece
one.
Of garbage.
There's a bad one on the Super Nintendo, Spider-Man and the X-Men Arcade's Revenge, where you have to fight Arcade.
That was a trash monster of a game. But the Maximum Carnage game for Sega Genesis was
People
actually
seem to like that one. Yeah,
good.
That storyline is kind of garbage.
Yeah,
I've read that. I remember reading that comic and being like, blah. But yeah,
have you played other Spider-Man games? I haven't played the new PS4 one.
I played Spider-Man 2002, the one based off the first movie.
Okay.
And I played Ultimate Spider-Man based off of Ultimate Spider-Man. I guess that's the other thing. That's the other. So at the same time, Marvel had released their Ultimate line, Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimates, and Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man being the first one. And Marvel used to do this thing online. They had this like Marvel, I can't remember what it was called. It was an online, and they had comics that you could read online for free. And I read so many. And I think maybe you downloaded them and read them. And I read like the first 12 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man on this thing.
Okay.
And I don't know how they kept track of these numbers, but it successfully did what it was supposed to do, in that I read these comics and then I wanted to read more and bought more. And then I became the comic book reader fan that I became.
Sitting before me, even now.
That was a big help. But yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man came out, I think it's 2001 when they published it. That's when I read all the way until the end. It was, this is one I had a subscription for. It would come in the mail for me. And like, I used to eat this comic up. You don't really like it.
The art, I really don't like.
You don't like
I'm okay with the story, but
Mark Bagley.
Yeah, I don't like that art at all.
It's a little, I think it comes across a little dated now because they're trying to update, like Spider-Man's into web design now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Instead of being a photographer and everything.
Yeah.
But there's it.
Let me check my email, Harry.
Yeah. The villains get all updated and everything, but it's all very like early 2000s. But it was for.
This is how I feel about Ultimate X-Men. It is so like anchored to its time.
Yeah.
That it's kind of hard to go back.
Yeah. Well, the difference is Ultimate X-Men is very bombastic when Mark Miller is writing it. It's very like action oriented, so maybe you can get across some of that stuff. Whereas this is very character and a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And some of the villain takes are a little like, oh, that's not as cool. But Venom was like a bioweapon, and they've kind of done some stuff with that, I think. So I don't know. It was interesting. They made a game based off of it, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
It was like very much
For what system?
For PS2 and GameCube and everything.
Okay.
It was like a storyline. You got to play as Venom as well.
Weird. I never played this.
So that was very important in my Spider-Man journey. So.
I enjoyed, I guess while we're talking about video games, I did enjoy Spider-Man Friend or Foe on the Wii. That was pretty fun.
Sure.
You'd go and play a level, then you'd kind of get one of Spider-Man's, like Venom or Black Cat or people who are occasionally Spider-Man allies. And then you get to play as them a little bit. You have to sort of figure out, are they friend or foe?
Yeah.
That was a good game to play with my friend Dan Christo. Shout out to Danny C. We played that, blasted through that in a weekend when he was visiting.
Right.
But
I read a book in high school. I didn't read too many Spider-Man books. I read a lot more of the X-Men novels, but they had one called Carnage in New York, and it was by David Michelini and Dean Wesley Smith. I don't think it was very good, but some stuff, there was a line in there where Spider-Man learns that he needs to punch through Carnage, not punch Carnage. And now I remember being a teenager and having a sledgehammer at work to smash couches. Yeah. And I'd be like, don't hit the couch, hit through the couch.
Nice.
And everything.
I like it.
But I just remember Mary Jane having a voice acting interview and it being the worst thing I had ever read.
Weird.
And then, with Mary Jane in these books is always her acting career, and it's always... I don't know. It's always very separate from everything else. But
let me ask you this. Do you prefer your Spider-Man with or without Mary Jane?
With.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of lean towards without. There are some arcs that I like her in, and other times
you like a Tomcat Spider-Man. So
no, I don't. But there's an arc we'll get into in a minute when we get there.
Okay. And then also the first Spider-Man movie came out.
Yeah.
Which was huge.
I saw that probably 5 times at least in theaters.
I did see it 3 times in theaters, yeah. I bought my tickets.
Well, I saw it 5 times. I don't know.
I bought my tickets 2 weeks in advance for Spider-Man, the first movie. And I had some friends who were like, why would you pre-order your tickets? That's so stupid. And so me and my other 2 friends were in line at Spider-Man, and we saw that kid come in, go up to the front booth, and have to leave because it was sold out.
Just
all
desserts.
shows
nice
were sold
try,
out.
Flash Thompson.
I mean, I don't know if people can remember because everybody likes to kind of poop on the Tobey Maguire films when they get the chance. But there wasn't anything bigger at the moment.
Oh, no.
We had a Star Wars movie that summer, and nobody could care compared to Spider-Man.
I remember I was doing, this is so nerdy, I was doing a production of Bye Bye Birdie when I was in this, and we had some time after dress rehearsal or something, and so we were going to go see Spider-Man, and this was a long time after it had come out. Yeah. And we went, and there was 3 or 4 of us. We couldn't sit together. I mean, it was totally packed. We had to sit randomly throughout, and we did it. Nice. We were still all right, I want to see Spider-Man for the 5th time, so we'll just sit by ourselves. Yeah. It was big business.
A lot of people were talking when it came out about how this was the first kind of movie like this after 9/11, and America kind of needed this movie to because we had just spent 6 months, in
Spider-Man 2, you mean?
No, Spider-Man 1. This movie came out in 2002.
Did it?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
May 2002.
This was the one where they had to take out the
Twin Towers scene where he webs up the helicopter between the 2 Twin Towers.
Yeah, and I remember even the original posters had the reflection in its eye.
Yep. But I remember just reading a lot of articles it was very cathartic for us as a nation to see a super heroic. Yeah, and I mean that's why you get all those scenes in there.
Oh, that's true.
This is New York.
We're all working together.
You mess with one. You mess with everybody who is in New York at this time.
All right, let's talk about the Sam Raimis for a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've covered the early TV shows. We've covered most of the video games. Let's talk about the Spider-Man trilogy. Okay. Now, this is around the time where comics are really popping for you.
I mean,
right?
Yeah. X-Men comes out in 2000. This comes out in 2002. And then, the floodgates just open. Yeah. So
I had a huge crush on Kirsten Dunst at this point.
Same.
So,
Same.
But these movies at the time, I loved them. 5 times for the first one. Went to a midnight showing of the second one.
Oh, nice.
I saw the third one locally at Charcoal Corral when it came out. And there was I don't know if listeners are familiar with Charcoal Corral over in the Silver Lake Perry area. You can sit outside, you can sit on the grass, and there's a pretty big lawn and all the cars. We were there to see Spider-Man 3, and it was just a complete patchwork. We were blanket to blanket with people all around us. Yeah. Not a place to park. It was just not a single more person could have fit there. So
I think
huge.
technically Spider-Man 3 has still sold the most tickets of any Spider-Man film.
Yeah.
If you instead of doing inflation math and everything, it's just ticket sales is still the highest.
This is one that I need to revisit because
It's not
pretty sure.
good,
I am pretty sure
but I
that I
like
have
it.
only seen this that one time in
Oh, wow.
Jungle Corral. I don't think I've ever seen it since.
Well, see, you may have seen the first one more times than me in theaters,
Yeah.
but I saw each Spider-Man movie 3 times.
So I guess that all works out.
It all evens
Yeah.
out the numbers. Yeah, I saw. I just remember with like Spider-Man 2, my friends. It was the same thing with Return of the King. Like, oh, hey, I'm going to the movie. I'm like, I am too.
Here's where things get delicate between us.
Oh,
Because I have recently watched Spider-Man 1 and 2, and I didn't.
Uh-oh.
I feel about them the way that
just
I
laughed like a Spider-Man villain.
the way that I feel about the show Scrubs.
Oh, jeez.
I loved it.
Good night, everybody.
Watched Scrubs constantly.
Uh-huh.
Like I was obsessed with it. I loved it. Now I try to watch Scrubs and I just think, boy, this is so early 2000s and I still love it for like what it was to me, but I don't feel that the show Scrubs translates as well today as it does then. And I think for the Raimi films, and I know we're not going to agree on this.
That's okay.
But I think for the Raimi films, like he was going for such a purposeful, melodramatic tone that absolutely nailed it, like in the early 2000s. But I don't find those, for me, like it works as well today as it did then. Counterpoint?
Well, like, I remember watching Spider-Man 2, and this would have been like 2007. Like, I had just started college. I was having a rough time. I had no cash. My girlfriend had just broken up with me back home. And so I was like in this really like kind of sad place where I'm like, I don't have friends. I don't have money and everything. And I'm watching Spider-Man 2, and there's this scene where he's at the window and he's given up being Spider-Man and he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. But then he saved a little girl from a burning building. And now he's like, oh, I guess I have to be Spider-Man. He's at the window. He's like, am I not allowed to have what I want? And it was just this kind of like, sometimes when you're growing up, you can't have everything you want. And it that line like just kind of hit me. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Sometimes things are hard and you can't have what you want, but you got to keep being Spider-Man.
I saw, when Marvel did their whole thing where they put just a webbed number 4 recently on social media. If you're not aware of this, listeners,
Marvel really let us
Marvel
down.
put a webbed number 4 on there, and instantly people thought either it's going to be some sort of Spider-Man Fantastic Four thing, or they're going to take the aborted Spider-Man 4
Script,
and make it into a graphic novel or something. There's a lot of excitement about it. Including my own. I mean, I was all ready for that. Yeah. And then it just turned out to be J.J. Abrams is writing a Spider-Man story, and apparently somebody from 2004 cares about this.
But myself and many other people on Twitter were so excited, and when we found out what it was, we were heartbroken.
It was a real letdown. But the aftermath of that was a lot of people on Twitter like bashing the Raimi films.
Yeah,
and somebody said something about like, oh, these are the worst Spider-Man movies. And I saw a Twitter user saying something like, well, you must be 14 years old. You know? And I really think that that's true because I appreciate them for what they are and think that they're so important, like in the grand scheme of like the Spider-Man story, the Spider-Man saga. And I just think I don't like to hear people say that they're bad or something like that because they're not. They're absolutely not.
Right.
They were perfect for what like the world needed at the time and sat so well with the rest of pop culture at the time. And I think in some ways, because they were so in touch with what was going on, that makes them a little bit of a time capsule for that time. That makes it, for me, harder to go back and watch again and appreciate them.
See, I think that I'd agree pretty easily about that with the first one, because the first one is very quirky in a lot of ways. But I still think Spider-Man 2 is one of like the great superhero comic book films. And other movies have had great, the Spider-Man versus Doc Ock on the train, everything. That's one I compare like most things to in movies. I'm like, was this as good as the Spider-Man on the train scene? Yeah. It wasn't? Okay, then. Yeah. So like, but also you're right, it's probably an age thing, because like X-Men 2, Spider-Man 2, and Batman Begins are the like superhero films I compare most superhero films to. So I don't know. I think Spider-Man 2 just gets so much right. And it's still probably my favorite Spider-Man film, though.
Well, they get so... I mean, there's so much... He uses melodrama in such an effective way. But,
the posters for Spider-Man 2 are so cool.
If you're not, like, in touch with that, then it doesn't quite... I don't know. It doesn't translate as well.
They're a little bit too... sincere for our slightly cynical and ironic era at the moment. So They're not like, oh yeah, I may be Spider-Man, but take a look at this.
Yeah.
I don't know. So there's a lot less self-deprecating.
He's not a particularly quippy Spider-Man.
No.
Which I guess is... Otherwise, I mean, I really like Tobey Maguire in those movies, and I don't get the people who complain about Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
But if I were going to level a criticism at those movies, it would be...
No, he's not quippy.
He's not funny.
Yeah.
Like, maybe ever.
Yeah.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Trying to get the brooms to stay in the closet's hilarious, but Spider-Man just isn't particularly
the humor
funny.
comes from how sad Peter's life is, not so much what Peter says when he puts on the mask. Yeah, that's a fair complaint.
Yeah. I still quote, "Thank God for you, Peter."
Yeah.
Like all the time.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe is great.
Yeah.
I've come to appreciate him more as I got older. Doc Ock is great.
You just got to picture Sam Raimi being like, "Willem, that's great, but a little more," and him being like, "Really?" yeah, more. Finish it! He's just woo.
Yeah, it's great. And Spider-Man 3, I think if they had made Spider-Man 4, I kind of hold to the thing where if they had done Spider-Man 4 and made Venom the only villain in Spider-Man 4, and that way Spider-Man 3 is kind of like an origin, then maybe it's the same way like Age of Ultron is a better film because of Civil War and other movies.
That's not uncommon. I mean,
you might have saved it.
Toss it over to Star Trek. You have a movie like Star Trek 5, which people kind of hate because it's like it doesn't take it seriously and it's very goofy. But then 6 comes along and suddenly Star Trek 5 is just a fun, quirky little thing. Like your feelings with the Jurassic Park 3, perhaps?
Though, to be fair, from what I've seen of Spider-Man 4, it might not have been the home run that we had been thinking.
That's too bad.
I remember there were, I think, Anne Hathaway might have played the Vulturess. Yeah. Anyways, I might have forgiven it too.
Yeah, you might have. You might have.
But we got the
I'll tell you what.
What?
If someone wants to make for me Spider-Man 4 and Batman Triumphant, I will watch both of them.
I in this day and age, I wouldn't actually be surprised if they're like, we're making Spider-Man 3 for MCU, and we're making Spider-Man 4, and we're doing Into the Spider-Verse.
Why not?
I think we'd all just put Spider-Verse on it.
I'd be there.
Yeah.
I would totally be there.
Less so for the Garfield films.
The Garfield films.
So you probably remember this because this is one of the rare cases where I had a real my first impression was the wrong impression. But
you loved it.
We saw the first Spider-Man movie, the first Amazing Spider-Man, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
And as I've tried to come to terms with that over the years, I realized it was just like I liked Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I was just happy to see Spider-Man, but they were also using so much of what Sam Raimi had already done that I think I still had like residual feelings.
Well, the thing with
I do not like it at all.
The thing with the Andrew Garfield movies, I think he's actually a very good Spider-Man.
Sometimes.
I think he's a fun, like throwing out the like wisecracks and things kind of Spider-Man.
It's kind of pervy though.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a little pervy.
Gwen
Stacy's like, I don't want to go swing. He's like, come on. She's like, no, my dad. Come on.
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, they have good chemistry.
Yeah.
Garfield and Emma Stone.
Yeah.
They have good chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I didn't like. And then we watched it again, and I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times, weirdly.
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of ended with like, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't hate it. Mm-hmm. I don't like anything they do with the lizard.
Oh, God, it looks so bad.
I don't like that Peter has no transition at all. He goes from like...
cool kid to cool
sexy kid with glasses to cool sexy kid without glasses. You know
Peter
I mean?
Parker, stop skateboarding in the halls.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Which one has the Stan Lee cameo?
Oh, they both do.
Well, which one has the one that I'm talking about?
The lizard fight in the library.
In
the
school
library.
Yeah,
Is that's
up
pretty
there
great.
among the best Stan Lee. Here's where you're probably going to like slap me in the face.
Yeah.
I like Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, that's fine.
I liked it when I saw it.
Yeah.
I continue to like it.
I saw Amazing Spider-Man 2 in theaters, and the whole time I was like, I have never been so bored and so ready to just die.
Yeah.
Honestly, I felt like tired after this. I'm like, I don't want to watch any more of these.
That's funny.
It was just rough. I did not like Jamie Foxx at all.
I did kind of like Jamie Foxx.
I didn't like whatever his name is who played Harry. It was just, for me, it did not hit any buttons. I mean, Emma Stone I find charming.
Yeah.
I was over Andrew Garfield's shtick in this one, and I think they stuck too closely to the Gwen Stacy arc, and they made a mistake.
True.
I think we would have been more excited for Amazing Spider-Man 3 had they just gone to London.
Yeah.
And then they did go to London.
Yeah.
Huh.
Weird.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, because they cut Shailene Woodley out of that. They
sure did.
Didn't she actually film scenes as Mary Jane?
She filmed scenes where she was going to be Mary Jane.
Yeah.
But then she was busy being in Divergent.
The reason why I liked this the way I did, I think, was because...
like gross skater boys playing Green Goblins.
It's among the most, like, colorful and vibrant comic booky...
I say that about Apocalypse, and you basically want to push me into a locker.
I don't think that's true. I don't feel that way about Apocalypse.
What? There's so much purple.
Okay. You're right. There's a lot of purple. And actually, I was a little bit more okay with Apocalypse when I rewatched it.
Anyway.
But yes, to me, that was just a very low stakes movie with charming leads and a super colorful background. I don't know. If I was going to watch a Spider-Man movie, that would be high on the list of ones I would rewatch.
I think Amazing Spider... You say it's low stakes, but I think they were trying to push so much stakes on us. Though, I have read some articles where people are discussing this and trying to... that Amazing Spider-Man 2's biggest problem was how much the marketing was pushing Spider-Man 3 that hadn't even happened yet, because it was all about, like, where's this going? You might see the Sinister Six next time.
Yeah.
And it was all about, like, pushing this, like, extended universe after Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I think that's where some of the exhaustion came from.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I remember at the time when they were talking about making, like, villain movies and stuff, and I just was like, I'm not interested in that at all.
Well,
it really did kill a lot of the momentum.
One thing they didn't stick with is the movies made money, but they were $200+ million for their budget. And originally these movies had been planned to be like lower budget, more like romantic
I would have
Spider-Man
been totally
films.
fine with that.
And instead they just raised the budget and made them big superhero stuff.
I think they're competing with Marvel. Like,
well, that
Marvel
was it.
mainstream,
Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 2 was trying to compete with the MCU with that stuff, and was probably
I think that's such a mistake, because there is a world for both things to exist, and I think you see that with Venom.
Yes,
I think that, like, Venom is a cheap
cheapy,
is a cheap
so is Deadpool.
standalone movie of a completely different variety, and it does not crowd.
Yeah.
I don't think. When you see clearly, like, Justice League and other things like that are trying to get into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then you have something like Venom, which is just like, whatever, he's doing a crazy accent.
Yeah.
I guess. This movie costs us $45 to make.
Yeah.
If you like it, fine. If you don't, whatever. Here's Woody Harrelson in a nanny wig. Yeah. So, I think you're right. I think that the whole talk about, like, the new Spider-Man machine really killed a lot of people's excitement.
Especially because none of the projects had anybody excited. Like, an Aunt May's Secret Agent movie was one.
It was just one of those things where if they would have just shut up and made Spider-Man 3, you know what I mean? I think we would have had a fine trilogy, and, like it or don't like it,
And also cheaper, because these movies would be, like, actually very profitable had they been, like, 150 instead of 250.
Yeah.
So...
Most of that one in the second one is probably Jamie Foxx's salary.
Oh, boy. Amazing Spider-Man 2... actually made the least amount of money, so I think they were like, we're in trouble.
Yeah, but I don't know, 2 movies in, I think I would have just made a cheap Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, because there's no closure to these films.
Yeah,
I definitely skip over them. I don't own them. They're very much less like, I've
seen them starting to put them out now in a 5-pack with the Raimi films.
I saw the Homecoming in one too. It was a 6-pack. Really? They're just throwing all the Spider-Man movies together. So
okay. Yeah. All right, well, let's talk Homecoming.
Okay.
Where is it? I don't know. I kind of feel like
it's my
favorite Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
And
that's fine.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 would be my second.
Wow. So I sat there very patiently and kindly while you were like, Spider-Man 2 feels like a skateboard video from 2001.
Yeah.
And here you are. This is your favorite
No,
Amazing Spider-Man. No, it's okay.
I would never, like, if I had to choose, do the Raimi films or do the Andrew Garfield films. If one of them is going to be erased from existence, I wouldn't even consider.
Right.
Because the Raimi films are just better for what they are. I'm just saying, if I was going to pick up one and watch it, I would be more likely to watch Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Well, yes. I mean, the Raimi films are Spider-Man movies in a world that's never had Spider-Man movies and still learning how to do this type of realistic and good superhero films, whereas Homecoming is jumping into a machine that is so finely tuned, it barely has to break a sweat.
I sort of feel like everything post Homecoming has made me like it a little bit less.
Oh,
if that makes sense.
Sure.
I don't like a Spider-Man who is so tied to other characters.
What? That was my complaint.
I agree with you. But it's the same reason why I didn't like the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon show, or because I just don't like. I don't like that.
The Spider-Man,
it doesn't work. I don't think it works for Spider-Man.
The Tom Holland Spider-Man, I get so tired of his like, is this a good job, Mr. Stark? Am I doing it now, Mr. Stark? I'm like, shut up. You're just being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Who cares? And I guess this is just the way the movies went, and maybe a kid like this is the MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So maybe this is what he would be like. But for me, I've always just seen like Spider-Man feels like he doesn't fit in with the other superheroes, and he's just doing his thing. So,
well, again, I mean, it's a character who has no agency, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just looking for approval and bouncing around and stuff. He just doesn't.
I like Homecoming. I just don't love Homecoming. It just does so much. I don't know. It never had a big action scene that I really thought was great. The trailer spoiled a lot of the action scenes as well. And I like Michael Keaton, and I thought the Vulture design was scary at times, but I never felt like there was a really great fight or action moment between the two.
I don't always need that.
Yeah, I guess that's something that I feel like is important in a superhero film, because they're supposed to be these bigger, larger than life things. Like, you can't do these scenes in a Jason Bourne film.
Right.
So
I think for me it was the performances. I think Tom Holland is great in that movie.
And Jennifer Connelly's great.
As the voice of the suit.
The voice of the suit.
Yeah,
Jennifer Connelly
really
wants to be the voice of my computer. That's fine.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
where do I get that app?
Keaton, I think, is great. I think their scenes together are really good. I think they have excellent
as the Vulture in the car is fantastic.
Oh
Keaton.
yeah.
But and Iron Man's Robert Downey Jr. is good in this movie, and I like seeing this different side of him. It's just I'm less into the whole it's just Spider-Man's dependence. Whatever happened to Uncle Ben there, Peter? You care at all?
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously they don't want to redo that again.
I think that they could have. I think that they could have kept a lot of what they did, but made Spider-Man himself a little bit more aloof and not quite so maybe I'll do it. You know what I mean?
Also,
I think that would have made the dynamic a lot better if Spider-Man was somewhat reluctant.
Liz Allen is the dullest character.
Yes.
In any of the. I mean, after I saw the new one with my wife, I'm like, do you remember Liz? She's like, which one was Liz?
Yeah.
Because you have Emma Stone, who's being very charming. You have Kristen Dunst, who's great.
Yeah.
Liz. I mean, the actress is good. I can't remember her name, but she was in BlacKkKlansman, and she was great. But Liz Allen is just there to be nice.
Yeah.
And that's her only character trait, that she's nice. I mean, so it's no big surprise that Zendaya is actually the character we're going to be following, because she's so much more interesting, even the character is. So, yeah.
Well, you want to talk Far From Home?
Yeah. It's the sequel.
Yeah.
You don't like this one, which is crazy, because Homecoming is your favorite Spider-Man movie.
Listen to me.
Okay.
I watched this in the worst possible setting. I was at Chuckle Corral. They kept shooting off fireworks. I had to strain to hear a lot of this. So I'm trying to withhold a little bit of judgment.
Were you like a grandfather watching this huh?
Basically.
Yeah, what? Mystery who?
But I just didn't want... I don't like anything to do with the 5-year blip that the characters had. I think that they sort of tried. They did acknowledge that in this movie, but they didn't acknowledge any of the realities of it. You know what I mean? Half of the population has been gone for 5 years and is back, and everything just goes on. And all of Peter's friends were in the blip as well.
Yeah.
And nothing matters. Yeah. Everything's the same, but everything's different.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for that, and I did not care at all for. There was just so much with Nick Fury and Maria Hill pulling Spider-Man back in and all that. I would have much rather just preferred a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
If it was just a Spider-Man Mysterio kind of thing, I don't need the pretext of maybe Mysterio's a good guy. I just don't think that's... I don't think that added anything to it, because if you're listening to a Spider-Man podcast, I assume that you're familiar with the fact that Mysterio is one of Spider-Man's primary villains.
My wife didn't know who Mysterio was at all, but it was spoiled to her either by me or other podcasts. And I think people just assume everybody knows Mysterio's deal, but she didn't. And I thought she just knew through osmosis who Mysterio was.
Interesting. Okay.
But I felt like they took out a lot of the stuff I didn't like about Homecoming, even though some of the stuff I didn't like was still there. But I was much more into this film than that. And maybe it's because I didn't know what was going to happen basically at the halfway point on.
Yeah.
Which is rare for a Spider-Man film, because usually the trailers are beat for beat what's going to happen in the movie. So I must have just avoided it. But I liked Mysterio. I liked Jake Gyllenhaal. I liked certain reveals in the movie.
Yeah.
And they're there are action scenes in this movie that felt memorable and like I was in. There's the initial one where Spider-Man is basically dealing with illusions like he has in the comics, and I was all into that.
Yes, I agree fully. Any of the actual like Mysterio scenes did truly feel to me like something after 2 Spider-Man series and another Spider-Man movie in this. I feel like the Mysterio sequences in this are things that we have genuinely never seen in a Spider-Man movie before.
I mean, I guess you could compare it to like Doctor Strange getting his tour through the multiverse the first time, where like hands are growing out of his hands, his hands. But this was very much like the character thing. Yes. And you're in a Spider-Man film. Yeah, we've never seen anything like this.
In many ways, I thought that this was the most true to the comics, like hero-villain interactions. When you're really going through
I also enjoyed the whole climax. I thought the action in the climax was one that I was just like really into. And I think there's the first half of the movie that's very much like vacation, all I ever wanted, vacation kind of stuff. And then the second half becomes much more super heroic stuff. And I think I felt like it was, especially the front half, was very light on actual Spider-Man. Yeah. I think it's an uneven film.
Yes.
But I think the difference is I was enjoying what the first half of the movie was, and then I also enjoyed what the second half of the movie was. But it never... It felt kind of like different movies at times.
Yes.
Or it wanted to be different movies. I also didn't like the whole elemental stuff. I thought they were boring to look at and everything, but I think that's also the point.
Right.
That they're just very generic. And I guess because MJ's like the main character and I don't dislike Ned like you do.
I liked him okay in the first one. I just thought he had nothing to do in this one. So
he had some humor. I mean, I thought there was some stuff.
He didn't play a role. He didn't like help in any way.
Yeah, he did. He had to be like Spider-Man's guy on the inside to help get the class out of the way. He had to be like, I think we should go to the opera.
All right.
All
right.
I don't love the whole, like, I just missed Iron Man so much. I want to make Iron Man so happy. Yeah. There's a scene with a gravesite. I'm like, and I just turned to my wife and like, Uncle Ben can screw off.
Yeah, yeah.
But, I enjoyed this one. So.
Yeah. I don't think I would say that I dislike it. It's definitely not the Spider-Man movie that I wanted. And I don't know. It's not one that I would instantly want to go. When Homecoming came out, I was like, I just want to watch that again.
Yeah.
This one, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's fine for what it is. I guess
Weird.
I think sometimes...
I never understand you. You are the Mysterio in my own life.
Oh, he really was Mysterio! I just think sometimes...
My hand is a hand is a hand!
The interconnectivity of these movies can be its strength, but I think sometimes it's also the thing that holds them back.
Homecoming was nothing but interconnectivity.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes I think it can really work, and other times I think, like, darn it, we have to address what's happened in these other movies. Yeah. So here we go, and I think sometimes it
can't
works
all be
and
Ant-Man.
Sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, yeah.
But I think,
don't you think that this movie would have helped with having some distance from the MCU? Did you think it would have been better served apart more?
I mean, at this point, like after Homecoming, to me, Far From Home felt less attached.
Okay, all right.
I mean, there was a lot of Iron Man stuff still there. There was still Fury stuff, but I felt like he was off doing his own thing. So I was glad there weren't any like crazy like superhero cameos or whatnot. So
yeah,
there you go.
Okay,
so
that's the movies.
Yeah,
you've said Spider-Man 2 is your favorite
movie. Yeah, no, but I think I might have to concede, and I've said this before, that Into the Spider-Verse, the Miles Morales film, it might be the best Spider-Man movie.
I don't think I can argue with that.
And every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe over time it might become my favorite one. Spider-Man 2 is probably like an age thing, but Into the Spider-Verse is just so good.
I mean, the acting in this is amazing, too. Chris Pine as like proto Spider-Man is great. I'm Nick Cage, of course. Jake Johnson as schlubby Spider-Man. I don't think I have any. I don't like the Kingpin's design.
It's too
much.
The
only thing that I can say negatively about this movie. Everything else I think is great.
So I don't know. I mean, for me, it's Spider-Man 2, Into the Spider-Verse, and then probably Spider-Man 1, but maybe Far From Home. There's probably not enough time on Far From Home for me right now.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And
that's
then,
why I'm trying to
I mean, the
hold that.
Garfield films are at the bottom. I would definitely put
Get it.
Amazing Spider-Man. I would definitely put Spider-Man 3 above those two films. Because there's things about Spider-Man 3 I still like.
Okay.
So,
Remember
the scene?
dance?
Not the dancing, but I don't hate the dancing. I understand the dancing, I think. But I mean, like, the crane rescue scene is pretty great. The scene where he's like swinging around he's fighting Goblin and he's like swinging around the Empire State Building and shooting webs at him at the same time in his like street clothes. It's
the level to which I
Stan
don't
Lee.
understand this movie or don't remember this movie is really coming back to
and
me.
I actually don't hate the Venom stuff. So
you know what?
What?
I like that though. I like that his web shooters are organic.
Yes.
Unpopular opinion.
They're kind of
I know,
gross
but I
when
like
you think
that.
about it. Yeah.
Well, they are gross, but it's just. That's like the one thing that spiders do, and for him to not have that power is.
I didn't care
I
about that
understand
either,
why they did it.
Growing up,
you know.
So I was like, sure, that's fine.
Yeah. As we mentioned, we did dig into some Spider-Man comics as well as other Marvel Comics issues with author Fred Van Lente, who wrote some of the Spider-Mans that we've read recently, including Red-Headed Stranger, which has my favorite Spider-Man villain, the Chameleon.
He's your favorite?
I know. I always like Chameleon stories.
I mean, I guess mine's Doc Ock.
Yeah.
But
well, that's classic.
But I mean, yeah.
All right. So we will talk more about Spider-Man comics when we sit down with author Fred Van Lente in a special Off the Books episode coming later in the week. So keep an eye out for that. So in closing, we have tons of Spider-Man comics, movies, kids books, adult books, everything you could want right here in the David A. Howe Public Library. And of course, we can get you anything that you want. Spider-Man for me is a character that makes me happy.
Yeah, you've said that.
If I was down and I wanted to like read a comic book, I always gravitate towards Spider-Man. Even more than Superman.
Oh, wow.
And what are you going to
I think on Goodreads, my shelves in terms of size-wise goes X-Men, Batman, Spider-Man.
do? Okay.
So,
all right.
But Spider-Man has been a lot of comics. I mean, that's from the Ultimates as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in for this extra long episode. We'll talk more Spider-Man comics, and we'll sit down with Fred Van Lente in our next Off the Books episode. And don't forget, Eric and I are going to be at the Allegheny County Fair on the 15th, right?
15th. I don't know.
No,
I was
one of
making
those
up a
days.
number.
One of those days. The 15th, we're going to do a live episode there, and you can stop by and see us at the booth, the STLS booth at the Allegheny County Fair.
You know what's happening the 16th?
What?
My Blu-ray Criterion edition of Night of the Living Dead is supposed to arrive.
It's a big time in any young man's life.
Yeah.
Congratulations. All right, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.